In this demo, we're going to show how the Boardwalk application engine can work in conjunction with Office 365 for sharing data as part of an application run through the Boardwalk database. The application we're going to be looking at today is a tax application. In this example, we're showing the Excel workbook that has the book to tax rec data or book to tax reconciliation data. And across the workbook itself, there's many different tabs that have to be filled out and information collected from different people. So you see here is P02, P03, there's add backs and other adjustments. And let's take a look at the P02. Well, in P02, P17, you can see that there's dimensionality that's part of the business that says, I have these different business units as part of the different units that are responsible for filling out this information as part of an overall tax application. Well, with Boardwalk, you can take the data and work with it in really any type of user interface you like, including Office 365. And the way we do that is the data itself is inside the database, and then we're able to apply access control to it independent of what the user interface is. So in this case, as you look at this data, it says what are the business units, the codes, and things like that. And I've set up a number of users that are going to interact with this data. And based on their user or their username, they're only going to see the information for their specific business unit and work inside of the UI of their choice and then submit changes to the database, and then you see the changes roll up. So I'm going to go ahead and leave the Tax Manager version up right here, but I'm going to go ahead and open up the template that's distributed inside of Excel. And the template distributed inside of Excel is blank. There's nothing in it. And the user comes in and they say, okay, well, I'm going to download my data. And when you do that, then it asks you to log in. And I'm going to say, I'm going to log in as external ops. And when I log in, it goes to the database and it finds the information based on the access control and populates only that information inside the workbook. So you can see it's building out the Excel file now, taking the information from the database, and only the rows that are associated with this user external ops are going to show up inside this database or this version of the data that's being created that in the manager template had all the rows. So let's go ahead and take a look at the P17 data here. And as you see, the data for external ops is the only information inside this workbook. And if you look back at the manager template and I go to P17, you'll see all of the information's here, retail and external ops. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to say, okay, well, I need to make some changes here to P17 as external ops. So I'm going to say, let's make this instead of minus 1200, let's make this be minus 800, and I'll say another change. So now I've gone in and I've actually made some modifications. You can see the math working inside of Excel here. I'm going to say push this change back to the database. So I say submit, and then it asks me to add a comment, and I say my updates, and then I say submit, and then it figures out exactly what's changed, only takes those changes and pushes them back to the database so that they can be seen by other users. Now the same principle works inside of Office 365. So if I go to my Office 365 here and I see I've got this workbook called P02 tax data, and I can say, okay, well, let's go ahead and open this up. And I open this up in Excel Online. And in the Excel environment, we're running a VBA client, but in the Excel Online environment, it's a Java application. So if I edit this browser, or edit this file in the browser, and then if I go and take a look at the menu bar, there's a client in here for Boardwalk. So I can say, okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and log in. And if I click on this guy again, it'll say sign in, side out. I say, let's log in as tax retail. And say password 0. Okay, so now I'm signed in successfully. Now, you can see if I look at this file that this is the P02 data, and only the P02 data is showing up inside the workbook or inside of Office 365. But you have the same flexibility where you can go in and say, what tabs do you want to show? And in this case, if you remember correctly, on each one of the tabs, the different business units only see their data. So you can see here, retail is only seeing their information. So if I come in and I say, let's change this to be 400, and then also let's go in and make a change here and say my updates, and then I say, okay, well, let's push this change to the database. So I say submit this. Then it's going to look at the data inside of this Office 365 session. It's going to find the changes, and it's going to push it back to the database. So you can see here, down here, it says submit successful. So let's go back to Excel and say, okay, let's go back to the manager. Now here's the manager view again. And first we'll go to P17, right? Now P17 now I'm going to refresh as the tax manager. And when I do that, it's going to go out to the database and it's going to say what changes have been done to this workbook. And you're going to have any number of users all working concurrently. And when I refresh, it goes and finds the change, and here's the value, the change that was done, and another one. And you remember this was by external ops. So if I go in and I say, well, let me verify, who's done this change. If I click on a cell history, it says here's the change that was done by external ops. So now if I go back over to P02, which is where we were working on in the browser, and again I do a refresh here, now it's going to look at the changes that were done by P02, whether they were done in Excel or in Office 365, and then I'll see the change come in that I did here. And you can see here, remember I changed it from 200 to 400 in the browser, and likewise the changes come in here. And if I say show me a history of this one, I can see that the update was done by tax retail. So with Boardwalk, you're able to have multiple users working in multiple application environments, including Office 365, for any application that's run inside of Excel. It's just in this example we've been showing you a tax application. Thank you.